new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. As Episcopalians, and more importantly as Christians, we are called to love one another as God loves us. And yet, this core tenet of our faith is too often forgotten, especially when one looks at the history of the Church and its relationship with our marginalized communities. The history of the Episcopal Church, like many institutions of its kind, is built on the backs of slavery, resting on the land of our indigenous forefathers, rooted in the exploitation of migrant workers. While we cannot change the past, the Episcopal Church, and subsequently the Diocese of Western North Carolina, is dedicated to the work of building beloved community. A community of global vision, in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. And at the root of this community, as God has shared with us, is a commitment to love one another.
The term beloved community was first penned by 20th century philosopher Josiah Royce, but popularized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who used the phrase to describe an attainable community dedicated to nonviolence and interpersonal communication. For decades, the Episcopal Church has been dedicated to the work of building this beloved community by extolling a consistent message of education on the systemic sin of racism, and has taken action to eliminate racism wherever it exists. Our institutions, communities, churches, and in ourselves. Here in the Diocese of Western North Carolina, guided by the support of Bishop Jose, we are continuing to seek ways to become a beloved community, from expanded dismantling racism training for all age groups to our Barrier Breakers series. We are continuing to keep beloved community at the core of every ministry we do in the diocese.
Becoming beloved community extends to all of our brothers and sisters in marginalized communities. We do this work to acknowledge the land that was stolen from our indigenous brothers and sisters, land we gather on, build upon, and worship on still to this day. We do this work so that our LGBTQ neighbors may see themselves as welcomed in this community, embraced and accepted as they are. We do this work so that our Latino and Hispanic neighbors may feel that they have a home and may feel welcomed as they hear worship in their own language. We do this work so that we may all continue to grow, to become a community of reconcilers, justice makers, and healers.
We are excited to share some of the ministries in our diocese that forward the work of becoming beloved community. Our expanding Latino ministries, newly developed Indigenous ministries, and Barrier Breakers series. And yet, following in the footsteps of Jesus, each ministry of the Church is centered in the work of the beloved community.
As we move forward as the Church, I urge you to consider how we may continue to forward the work of the beloved community for years to come. This looks like reconciling the ways in which we have wronged others, opening our churches to those who are different, practicing listening rather than always speaking. It is with these practices that we may continue to walk in the way of love as Jesus has commanded, to become beloved community.